There's a lot of perks in Dead by Daylight, and it's easy to get caught up using the same 4 perks or the same 3 builds over and over again. One thing that bothers me about Dead by Daylight is it doesn't incentivize players to create new builds or interact with perks in different ways. There's no dynamic patches so the same perks stay meta for years. Adepts sound great, but even they fall flat. There's some perks that straight up can't be used in their adepts. For example, Ace has Open-Handed, which increases the aura read of all aura perks on the Survivor team by 16 meters, but there's no perks that Ace has that would help with that. Or they create adepts that have perks that actively work against each other. I mean, when you do an invocation, you're broken for the rest of the trial, so they decided to pair that with self-healing perks. Twice with Sable and Tori. Without further ado, here's some Survivor and Killer perks that weirdly synergize with each other, and I hope this inspires you to create your own builds or just try out some underutilized perks. The first of which is Make Your Choice paired with both Furtive Chase and Nemesis. With Make Your Choice, when you're outside of 32 meters of the hook, if somebody goes for that unhook, they will suffer from exposed for about 60 seconds. With Furtive Chase, when you hook the obsession, you gain both haste and undetectable for 18 seconds, but more importantly, when somebody unhooks the obsession, they themselves become the obsession. That then causes Nemesis to proc whenever any instance that the obsession changes from one person to another. That new obsession has Oblivious for 60 seconds and an 8-second aura read. So all of this paired together, when you're outside of 32 meters of the obsession's hook, when that obsession gets unhooked, the unhooker then gets exposed and oblivious for 60 seconds, and you can see their aura for 8. The great thing about this is you don't have to go for them right away. You can give them a false sense of security and then cut them off later, because you can see their aura for a little bit. On the Survivor end, I have Hardened and Dramaturgy. What Hardened does is after you cleanse one totem and open one chest, you no longer scream for the rest of the trial, and every instance that you would scream, you instead see the killer's aura for 5 seconds. Dramaturgy is kind of complicated, but what it does is while you're healthy, you can activate it to get a brief speed boost. After the speed boost, you randomly get given one of 4 different outcomes. You can either get an additional speed boost, a random item, exposed, or scream, essentially having 2 decent outcomes and 2 pretty bad outcomes. But when you pair it with Hardened, you instead turn the scream into an aura read, essentially having 3 good outcomes and only 1 bad outcome. Though to be fair, getting the item outcome can be annoying a lot of the time, because it would just give you a basic map when you had a god flashlight in your hand before. Personally, what I find great about this is not the fact that it synergizes well, but it gives you an excuse to use Hardened when there's a scream meta going on right now. Calm Spirit and Harden are only really effective against Scream perks, Scream killers, or recently Scream add-ons. So bringing Harden into a match when you don't know if you're going to go against a Scream killer is pretty helpful. Next up I have Beast of Prey and Predator. What Beast of Prey does is once you get Bloodlust and Chase, you then get undetectable for 40 seconds. Bloodlust is essentially the game realizing the chase is going on too long, so they give you a speed boost to help out. And with the semi-recently changed Predator, what it does is once you lose chase with somebody, you can then see their aura for 8 seconds. This one's a fun little bait for a Survivor that's juicing you a little too hard. Once you get Bloodlust, you get undetectable, so then you break chase, and you can see their aura, but they have no idea where you are. You can then surprise them around the corner or cut them off somewhere. It's a pretty niche situation, but if you get it done, it honestly is pretty fun. And like most jump scare builds, they work best on indoor maps. Now I saw this being used by other people, but I decided to include it because it honestly is pretty fun to pair Mettle of Man with Object of Obsession. Mettle of Man activates once you take 3 protection hits throughout the entire match. While you have it active and injured, you basically get to take a free hit without going down. However, once you do get that free hit, the killer can then see your aura outside of 12 meters just to make up for the fact that you have a free hit. But because of this aura read is when Object of Obsession procs. With Object, every time the killer can read your aura, you then see the killer's aura. With both of these paired together, you essentially get a permanent aura read on the killer until you go down. This allows you to have some pretty funny scenarios where you can take a chase across the map and the killer doesn't necessarily realize that you can see their aura too. Overwhelming Presence really pairs well with Weave Attunement. With Weave Attunement, once the survivor fully depletes their item, it gets dropped on the ground and you get an 8-meter aura read around any items on the ground throughout the entire map. With Overwhelming Presence, whenever a survivor is within your tear radius, their items get depleted at twice as fast. Combining both of these perks creates a fun and unique way to counter items. It's especially effective against flashlights, so it's a good substitute for Lightborn if you're wanting to try it out. These 2 perks also pair perfectly with 2 more perks I'm going to tell you guys. That's a tongue twister. Though next up for survivors, I have Chemical Trap and Potential Energy. With Chemical Trap, you can activate it when you repair 20% of a generator. While it's active, you can interact with a down pallet to place a sort of slowdown bomb. So if the killer were to break it, they have a 50% hindered status effect for 4 seconds. What Potential Energy does is it allows you to store up to 20% of generator repair progress to use at any point. If you combine both of these, it essentially allows you to use 2 chem traps in one chase. After the first one explodes, you need to find a gen and tap it with your Potential Energy, and then you'll have a second one to use during that exact same chase. There is a caveat where if you get hit before you can release your Potential Energy, you lose some tokens and you won't be able to get the second chem trap. But despite that, it honestly is really fun, and when I was trying to get the footage for this video, I was so proud of myself when I pulled it off. You can pair this with Windows of Opportunity in order to see pallets that you can use, and you can honestly use it with Visionary in order to see the nearest gen to you in order to get the second chem trap up. The next one I have for killer is Human Greed paired with Hoarder. What Hoarder does is whenever a survivor interacts with a chest or an item on the ground within 96 meters of you, you get a notification of their position. Another thing Hoarder does is it creates 2 more chests on the map for the survivors to use. That, paired with Human Greed, which whenever a survivor enters 8 meters of an unopened chest, you can see their aura for 3 seconds. Both of these perks together create a really subtle yet effective information gathering duo. And on a totally unrelated note, anniversary offerings do add an extra chest on the map. So I mean, maybe you want to use this build during an upcoming anniversary event. I don't know. It's up to you. Which also, Human Greed and Hoarder pair perfectly with Weave Attunement and Overwhelming Presence from earlier. Human Greed incentivizes players to open chests to then grab that item, where you can then use Weave Attunement on that item again. Which, not to mention, if a survivor were to pick up their Weave item, you can see their location with Hoarder, and they also get Oblivious for 40 seconds. Pairing these perks together create a really unexpected way to not only counter items, but just to have a general map-wide aura read. I want to include Camaraderie and Shoulder the Burden, only because I don't see that many people using them together / talking about it, but these 2 perks pair perfectly with each other. Shoulder the Burden, when you're unhooking somebody, you have the option to take away a hook state from them. This is most effectively used when unhooking somebody that has reached 2nd stage, and you haven't been hooked yet that match. In that scenario, you would then immediately go to 2nd stage when you get hooked, which is where Camaraderie activates. When a survivor gets within 16 meters of your hook while you're in 2nd stage, your hook pauses for 34 seconds. Pairing these 2 perks together essentially gives you half of your old hook state back. And it's really nice if the killer does decide to camp you for using Shoulder the Burden. I mean, one of the bad things about Shoulder the Burden is that your anti-tunnel and your unhook perks won't get as much value during that match, where, for example, you can only get 1 dead hard during that match if you use Shoulder the Burden. It's really nice to see a sort of anti-camp / anti-tunnel be able to shine with Shoulder the Burden instead of be hindered by it. Now, this one's more of a fun rather than effective perk combo, I would say. It's Shadowborn paired with Hex 2 can play. With Shadowborn, if you get blinded by any means, then you get a 10% haste for about 10 seconds. This perk doesn't really get that much love, only because Lightborn exists. With Hex 2 can play, you activate it after you get blinded or stunned 2 times, and the next blind or stun also blinds the survivor for 1.5 seconds. Both of these pair together, if a survivor blinds you, you both get blinded, however you get 10% faster. It's a fun little jump scare to play around with survivors, but I wouldn't really say it's that effective. So the final one I have on my list is Blast Mine with Residual Manifest. This is one of my personal favorite perk combo to use when I have 2 extra slots in my build. With Blast Mine, once you reach 40% repair progress, you can then plant an explosive on your generator, where if a killer were to kick it, they get both stunned and blinded for 4 seconds. That then activates Residual Manifest. Whenever you blind the killer, they get the blindness status effect for 30 seconds. So both of these paired together, essentially when the killer kicks your gen, they can no longer see auras around them for 30 seconds. Not only does this counter perks like Nowhere to Hide, but it also becomes really passively annoying because you can't see generator auras for 30 seconds after kicking that 1 gen. And since the killers that tend to kick gens tend to be pressure demons, then it sort of ends up being the perfect bait for those types of killers. Those are 10 different fun, unique builds that you can try for both Survivor and Killer. I really hope you did enjoy it, and maybe it inspires you to create your own builds, or Honestly, I do hope you guys have fun using these builds. This is my first time making this type of video, so literally any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Even if you hated the video, I would like to know it. I do have more Weird Synergies I can create a video on if you guys would like to see more, and I can even make Killer and Survivor have their own videos, so it's not mixed and match like this one was. Anyways, I appreciate you guys for watching, and I'll catch y'all in my next video.